I've been kicked out of Graceland twice. Now I know why. I discovered it involves an undercover FBI investigation called Operation Fountain Pen. This is Elvis Presley's private jet. It's a Lockheed Jetstar that he bought in December of 1976 and only owned it for a few months until selling it to the Sheikh of Saudi Arabia. It changed hands a few more times until I bought it on Elvis's 88th birthday, January 8th, 2022.
And by the way, today is Elvis's 88th birthday.
Birthday day for Elvis Presley.
It had been abandoned in the Roswell, New Mexico desert for about 40 years when it came up for auction. On our way back from New Mexico, back here to Florida, we stopped at Graceland. Of course, that's when the problem started. In less than 5 minutes, this guy in a white pickup truck came up and said, "I know that jet, get it off of the property right now," unquote. He was not happy to see this airplane at Graceland, and I did not understand why. 18 months later, when we finally got our conversion to a road-going vehicle of this contraption finished, the first place we took it was, you guessed it, Graceland. This time, we called ahead. We told them we were coming. We were trying to do something for publicity for both Graceland and the Elvis jet. Well, we were in Graceland for about 5 minutes, 10 tops. And everybody was enjoying it, loving the Elvis jet. And then an older gentleman in a pickup truck came over and kind of had this look on his face. "Get off my lawn." And then he said, "You guys need to move this. Get it out of here." And then we said, "Yes, sir," and got in and left. And I kept figuring, I could not understand what this guy was so upset about, was seeing this airplane driving vehicle thing that once belonged to Elvis Presley, and it's very clearly documented why he was so upset seeing it back on Graceland. Then I discovered this jewel right here. These are some of the pages from a declassified FBI investigation called Operation Fountain Pen. I am quoting directly from the FBI files. Pro stated that he conned Elvis Presley out of Presley's Jetstar aircraft. Kiteser advised Pro that Pro had previously told him that he was going to get Elvis's aircraft, and that Kitzler had told Pro that it was mission impossible. Undercover FBI agents, worldwide money laundering, the mafia, private jets, offshore bank accounts. You can't make this stuff up. This is Operation Fountain Pen. If Elvis had today's sponsor, Aura.com, he might have been able to protect himself from some of this mess. Aura monitors your social security number and other personal information across billions of points, including something called the dark web, which I don't actually know anything about, except from another FBI investigation called the Silk Road, where they caught a bunch of bad people doing really bad things. When I signed up and I had them do my check where they look at the dark web and all this stuff and they check all these leaks, yep, mine was on that account and that list, so I had my credit immediately frozen so that I would not be as at risk of having an account opened in my name using my information. So that's awesome. But I'm very thankful for Aura.com. You know, I feel like the more digital we get, the less secure we get. Like, I remember when I only had one password and that was the code to get on a lockbox, and now there's 14,000 different passwords I have to remember, and there's companies where you actually manage your passwords for you, which to me is kind of crazy. And every app you sign up for, you have to create a new account with a different password that you can't use for the last 9 times. And I, frankly, have just resorted back to writing my passwords down on paper, honestly. So that's probably not the most secure, but somehow yet it seems the most secure because it's not digital. So there's my soapbox rant. Protect yourself by going to aura.com/jimmysworld, and when you sign up, you'll get your first 2 weeks for free. They also offer other things. Data broker opt-out to stop companies from selling your information. I didn't even know that existed. I thought
they took your information without your permission, just sold it even when you didn't care. But I didn't know that you can go in there and be like, no, don't sell my information. That's fantastic. If you haven't already, just scroll to the bottom of this video in the description, click on the link, and it'll send you straight to aura.com/jimmysworld, where you can try it free for 2 weeks. Since Vernon and Elvis didn't have aura.com, let's just go with the rest of the story and see how poorly this went.
The FBI set up this sting operation to catch a group of con men affectionately known as the Fraternity. For the Elvis jet part, we are going to focus on these few people. Frederick Pro, a New Yorker living in Miami that liked private jets. What a shocker. The Godfather himself, Phil Kitzner. Not to remiss, not one but two FBI undercover agents. Let me read a summary page from one of the undercover FBI agents. Nigel J. Winfield, also a minor player in this whole conspiracy, and several other individuals entered into a conspiracy to defraud the late entertainer Elvis A. Presley of approximately $350,000. It was a lot more than that. You'll see in a minute. This scheme involved the purchase and leaseback of a jet aircraft owned by Presley. Those individuals convinced Presley or his agents he could refinance the aircraft, obtain sufficient funds to upgrade the aircraft, and lease it out. These individuals obtained the funds to be used to upgrade the aircraft, spent the money, but never did any of the work. This is just one part of the bigger scheme. Let me lay it out for you. Beginning in 1974, Philip Carl Kitzer Jr. and other individuals operated an offshore bank identified as the First National City Bank and Trust Company in Grenada, West Indies. How am I not surprised by that? Which Kitzer and his associates had acquired by the fall of '76. This was bought in December of '76. It is reasonably estimated through comments made by Kitzer that the total amount of fraudulent negotiable instruments written through the offshore bank operated by Kitzer and Associates approximately, sit down for this, $2.5 billion in 1976. This makes Bernie Madoff look like a Boy Scout. In all three of these ventures, Kitzer and others sold or were involved in negotiations of letters of credit, certificates of deposit, loan guarantees, and other financial instruments of these offshore banks. Kitzer and his associates have termed themselves the Fraternity and are a loosely knit group comprised of about 30 to 40 of the world's top con men. Let me introduce you to an aircraft company called Span East. Span East was a company in Detroit, Michigan. Also another very not mafia-connected place at all. In 1975, it was now called SEA, S-E-A, and it was in dire financial straits. In order to retain their commercial operator certificate by the FAA, they had to come up with these finances and filing their financial statement. In late 1975 or early 76, Scuteri informed Neville, the FAA, that he had found, quote, an angel to take care of SEA's financial problems, and shortly thereafter, in early 76, Fred Pro arrived on the scene. Fred was the angel. For his generosity, he took over 80% of the company, and he was to only handle sales. Not suspicious at all. The first thing they did was change the name. They wanted to change it from SEAC to Air Cargo Express. Gosh, this just smells like a CIA operation. But no, apparently it's a different mafia group. Around this time, Elvis had owned the Lockheed Jetstar. Now this is the Hound Dog 2 that's at Graceland, so let's separate this airplane and that airplane. This is the one we're talking about right now. Elvis owned a Lockheed Jetstar which had an outstanding indebtedness of over $600,000 as of June 1976. This plane was not being used by Presley in his entertainment business and therefore was making payments on the asset that was not generating any return on its capital. In addition, attempts to sell the aircraft had resulted in no success. Breaking it down for you, the Lisa Marie, the bigger Convair 880 that Elvis was using now, he was flying that, didn't need the Jetstar, so he was going to sell the Jetstar. And in that entertainment, super high, crazy money world, leasing back private jets is a very common thing. A lot of times people will buy these jets, and then when they're not using them, they'll let other people rent them so they can offset some of their ownership costs. That's what Elvis was attempting to do with his Lockheed Jetstar, because he tried to sell it, nobody wanted to buy it, and he had a lot of debt on it, making payments, so we're going to lease it back and try to get it generating some sort of income. And then along comes some angels to help him out. Ackman, who is the president of WWP Leasing Group out of New York City, also not known for any mafia connections whatsoever. I'm seeing a theme here. So Winfield, Fred, and Caggiano promoted the idea of a sale-lease program involving the Jetstar and then upgrading the airplane. So these guys promoted the idea of a leaseback and upgrading the airplane to Presley. The transaction would be the sale of the Jetstar to WWP Leasing Group. In turn, it would borrow enough money from the Chemical Bank of New York to cover both paying off the existing debt and the upgrades and modifications. The additional upgrades were that $350,000. Upon completion of upgrading the airplane, the plane allegedly would be valued at over $950,000. Magically, the exact amount of money that it cost to do the upgrades and how much debt they owed on it. With WWP purchasing the plane, the contractual agreement would continue in that Presley would lease the plane back for 84 months at a monthly rental of $16,755 a month. Elvis would then lease that to Air Cargo Express, and Air Cargo Express would pay Elvis $17,755 a month. And at the end of those 84 months, Elvis would have the option to buy the airplane back for $1. And wouldn't you know it, all they asked for from Elvis was 2 months up front of rent payment of $16,755 per month. So not only did Vernon give the airplane to this financing group, he had to give them 2 more checks for roughly $35,000 on top of that. And the other side hasn't performed anything whatsoever, and they have all the assets. Man, not until after the fact do you see just how badly this goes. So to consummate all parts of the deal, Fred Pro gave Vernon Presley a check for $40,000, and it was at that time he took the keys to the Jetstar, the Hound Dog 2. And that's when Pro made the infamous call to Phil Kitzler saying, "Wheels up, we have Elvis Presley's Jetstar." When Vernon deposited those checks, they all came back as bad checks. That was June 25th, 1976. So Vernon hopped on the phone and said, "What's the deal, guys?" And he said, "Oh, my bad. That money was supposed to come from a different account. I forgot to transfer it. Here, let me send you a couple of other checks from this other bank that I have." And Vernon said, "Okay, it happens." Did I mention that bank was in Jamaica? To keep the fraud going, a month later, Vernon met with these guys again in Memphis and said, "Give me a check and clear this stuff up right now." And they said, "Okay." So then magically they came up with a check in the amount of $330,000, 48 and 33 cents. and it was accepted and drawn against the Chemical Bank of New York and deposited into the account of Elvis Presley. And this went against the $600,000 in debt that Elvis owed on the Jetstar at the time. At the same time, $17,500 to Frederick Pro Air Cargo to get everything set up and his management fee, $32,000 payable to Air Cargo Express for some more of the cockpit voice recorder and items they needed to get it on the right certificate, $129,500 payable to Trans World Industries for the Part 121 maintenance program, $45,000 payable to World Aircraft Exchange as part of the updating process, and then $117,500 also payable to Fred Pro for the Part 121 inspection and testing of the aircraft. In other words, $244,990 were paid by Vernon and Elvis Presley to this, as we see now, scam. This is a note from one of the undercover FBI agents as he was hanging out with Frederick Pro. It says, Pro indicated that he preferred to accept aircraft from individuals who desired to have their aircraft repaired. Instead of repairing the aircraft, Pro would disassemble the aircraft and sell the parts. He was an airplane chop shop. And his usual method of busting out a company is to take the viable company assets, which include liquid and semi-liquid assets, convert them to less valuable assets, which only appear to be valuable. Kind of like a EFT? Just saying. He diverts cash flow and increases business expenses until bankruptcy gradually occurs. In short, he swaps the good assets for bad assets. But did Vernon know something that these guys didn't? Before the ink dried on the deal, Fred Pro flew this thing to New York and contacted Chase Manhattan and First National City and got a $1 million mortgage on it. When Pro talked to the bank, he said, and I quote, "You just bought yourself an airplane." Well, when it came time to pay Presley his first payment, they didn't pay, strangely enough. I know, out of character. And then when Elvis's attorneys called him, he said, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be on auto pay and I forgot to click send. So let me go ahead and get that taken care of for you right now. This is how these scams work. You trade something of value, they give you a little bit back to think that it's working, and then they go, hey, this is working so well, let's do it again. And then they get that one, and then they give you a little bit back until finally you're just left with nothing. Fred told Presley that this is going to take a very long time to complete because the airplane has to go in for modifications and upgrades, and as we all know in airplane world, it takes a very long time to do anything. On October 1st, 1976, this little article right here was published, and the headline reads, "Uncollectible Drafts on West Indian Bank Flood U.S. and Total Millions of Dollars." And wouldn't you know it, inside this article was the very people that Presley had done business with. On that very same day, Presley told his attorneys to give him a call and get his plane back. Well, Pro had lots of excuses, saying it was a hit piece, it's not true, he had funds, give him a few days, he'll make the next payment. Pro called Presley on October 4th, Sunday night, and said, hey, I've got $200,000 coming in from an overseas account from certificates of deposit with your name on it. Oh, and by the way, the airplane still needs some flight testing, so it can't fly anyways. Fast forward one more month to November 1st, 1976, and you can imagine the Presley family's getting kind of frustrated at this point. But Pro, ever being the professional, he said, hey, I'll wire you the money, send me your bank account information, I'll make sure it gets in right away. And here's a fax from this bank that shows I have the money in the account as a guarantee that I'll pay. I honestly don't know how this guy can do this with a straight face. And you can believe that inside the fraternity, this was not going over really well because the stitching was starting to come apart at the seams. Wolfson inferred to Smith that he wanted to bail me out, and Smith recalls that this was relating to the fouled up mess that Pro had created through his inability to honor the contract. And this guy, Fred Pro, was flying Elvis's airplane all over the country and using Elvis's name to get more lines of credit in all these different banks and showing them the documents where they were business partners. That was November of 1976. This airplane was purchased less than a month later on December 22nd, 1976. I still can't find exactly why they bought this jet, but if I put myself in their shoes, I can see one of two options. Option one, they just needed another jet because they were using it again, or the Lisa Marie was not being used. Or option two, they at this point didn't realize how big of a scam this was, and they thought they were making money with these private jets, so they went and bought another jet, that one, to do the same leaseback thing with it. And then you'll see in a minute, when they get caught, that ironically lines up to when Elvis sells this airplane. There's option three, which it's foil hat time. Vernon and Elvis were actually, I know you're going to click off of the video as soon as I say this, but don't, working with the FBI undercover to bring down this ring of conmen. And they used his jet and this jet to do it. Because let me read you the arrest record. Phil Kitzner was approached at the U.S. Customs exit in Miami with an arrest warrant. He was apprised by the two undercover agents, blank and blank, but one of them is still around and talking about this to this day, and was advised that he was being arrested on outstanding warrants at Memphis, Louisville, and other places. His arrest was effected at approximately 5 p.m., subsequent to his arrival at 4:30 p.m. from the Republic of Panama. Also another fantastic place for money launderers, drug dealers, and the Clintons. And I'm going to quote, Kitzer expressed total surprise that warrants were outstanding for him at both Memphis and Louisville, and immediately indicated a desire to know full details of the 17-count indictment in Memphis and the 3-count indictment at Louisville. He stated he wanted to understand why he was included in federal indictments resulting in his arrest. He made inquiry as to whether Frederick Pro, Jack Elliott, Sonny Santini, and other associates were also arrested, and how properly he could see arrest warrants and indictments pertaining thereto. The more that I learn about Elvis's life, the crazier it gets.